Hello, and yes, welcome back to another video, guys. That's right, today we're back to talk about my top 10 worst films of 2022. Of course, always have to follow up the best films with the worst. Now, before we get started, a couple things. Number one, this is my opinion. If you like some of these movies, then good for you. I'm happy for you. Number two, I'm not going to do honourable mentions because I am going to be doing a ranking of every single film I've seen this year soon. So if you're going to go, what about this movie? That was pretty terrible. What about that? You will find all of that out soon enough. Third, there are actually a couple films that were worse than these ones. Like films like this, or that, or even this. But the reason I'm not including them is because I just feel like they're films people don't really care about. They're things that just no one talked about. So here I'm just sort of doing films which did get talked about. There's more reasons why these films should have been good, whether it be the actors or directors involved in it, or just the general being part of the franchise. So yeah, also all these films here were released in the UK in 2022. I did say this in my top 10 films of 2022. Said, you know, some of these might say 2021 on them on Letterboxd or IMDb, but they were released in 2022 in the UK. But still, there was someone who, of course, had to be like, that film was released in blah blah blah. No, these are UK releases, okay? Even though I'm pretty sure all of these actually do have 2021 written on them on Letterboxd and stuff. But anyway, so yeah, let's crack on with my top 10 worst films of the year. So yeah, get it started. Coming in 10th place was a film I was actually quite looking forward to because I'm a huge fan of the original animated film, and that is Pinocchio. Yeah, I love the original movie, and I knew this film wasn't going to be great. You know, these Disney live actions really haven't been the best, but I was excited. I was hoping it'd be okay. And a great director, you know, the man who brought us things like Forrest Gump, Castaway, and it had Tom Hanks, and it had that Disney budget. There's a lot of reasons why this film should have been good, and it was awful. All of the joy of the original Pinocchio was completely sucked out of this movie. Tom Hanks gives his career worst performance, I think, and there was just a whole lack of energy to this movie. The more the film went on, the worse it seemed to go. When you were in Geppetto's workshop at the start, it was okay, even with Tom Hanks' terrible performance. And as soon as you left that, you started to explore other characters. The film just really felt like no energy was going into it. There was some truly horrifying scenes. I know the scene where the kid turns into a donkey is never the easiest thing to watch in general, but here it was just so much worse. The kid actor was terrible as well. There was like a really lost plot in there with Pinocchio and this other puppet girl. And yeah, I thought the actual voice actor who was doing Pinocchio, the poor kid, wasn't doing the best job either. So yeah, and then at the end, the boat chase bit, my God, what was that, Disney? Pinocchio was terrible. Thankfully, we had another adaptation of Pinocchio this year, which was a lot better, which we will talk about very soon in another video. Coming in 9th place, let's talk about one of the worst endings to a series of movies ever, Jurassic World Dominion. Look, I grew up with Jurassic Park. The original is top 5 film ever for me. And then I don't mind 2, and I am a slight defender of 3. I think it's okay. I'm biased. I grew up with it. Jurassic World was a return for the franchise. It was fun. It wasn't incredible, but it done what it needed to do, and it was a good time. Fallen Kingdom was pretty bad, but I was hoping the film would learn from its mistakes here, and it didn't. This is by far the worst Jurassic Park film, and it should have been epic. It's the final movie. The dinosaurs have come to, you know, our islands. They're in America, and they're in a load of countries. And the returning cast are all back together on screen. There are so many reasons why this film should be good, and my God, it fails on so many levels. The big dinosaur threat of this one are just locusts. They're bugs, big bugs. The villains are so much more funnier than the previous movie. I thought the human villains from the second Jurassic World film were laughable. Here, they're even funnier. And the characters just have absolutely nothing to do. The dinosaurs, I know that dinosaurs are extinct, and these dinosaurs are genetically altered ones, so they're you know, made up monsters. But there was always a sense of realism to these creatures. They were animals. They were wild animals that would do anything. Here, they don't feel like that. They're literally talking to the humans. It's embarrassingly terrible. The film is way too long. It drags and it is so boring at times. Yeah, there's very little that's good about this movie. It just makes no sense. Even visually, it's not that great. The last ones were probably a bit more interesting because of the scenery and the locations. Yeah, this is up there with like Rise of Skywalker and another film we're going to talk about today. With one of the worst endings I've ever seen to a franchise. So yeah, Jurassic World Dominion. Terrible film. Then, we have a Netflix original, Spiderhead. Now, this film here, also, I thought was going to be quite good. It was bigged up by a few people saying it's like a Black Mirror episode come to a movie. And I agree with that. That's what it did feel like at times. It has Chris Hemsworth in it. It has Miles Teller, two really good actors. I'm big fans of both of them. And it was interesting because it was a very serious movie. And I was looking forward to seeing Chris Hemsworth do something quite serious because it's been a while. Seems like everything he does lately is very comedic. And he was awful in this movie. He seemed very out of place because it was a very serious movie. And he was trying to be serious, but he had this very comedic touch at the same time. And it really didn't work. His character felt so out of balance with, you know, what he was going for. And the story itself was a complete mess. There was a little bit of a love interest story in there as well, which also felt very out of place. And I just couldn't get behind this movie. Again, it was very Black Mirror-y, and I think this would have potentially worked as a 45-minute to an hour episode of Black Mirror. I genuinely think that would have been good. But here is a nearly 2-hour-long movie. It was awful. Just so many plot holes. And again, just nothing that interesting. It wasn't gripping. I was so bored for most of it. So yeah, Spiderhead, not a very good movie. Then in 7th place, we have another Netflix. I think this was Netflix. The Bubble. Yeah, wow. What a cast this one had. You know, you have Karen Gillan in it. You have The Mandalorian, Keegan-Michael Key. There is just so... The cast is stacked for this one. And the trailers for it look kind of good, you know. And I'll say this, one thing I did like, I do want to give credit to these films where credit is deserved. Pedro Pascal was the best thing about this movie. He was good. He actually made me laugh a couple times. Everything else, though, sucked. It's about a cast trying to make this movie, but they've gone into a bubble, a lockdown, because it's set during COVID. And there are so many interesting things they could have done with this movie, and it just fell flat on its face. They went down the most uninteresting directions they could with this movie. The scenarios that they could have created could have been really good and worked really well for the movie and been really funny, but instead they just went for these really uninteresting routes with the movie. And the characters themselves, no one really worked that well, other than maybe Pedro Pascal. As I say, his character was funny, but everyone else was very dry and very empty. The effects, I know they're not meant to be good, but they were very, very laughable at times. And yeah, I don't know, this story just seemed to go off in a few different directions, which were just like, I didn't understand it. I didn't understand why they chose those directions to go in. But anyway, The Bubble, yeah, that came out. Then in 6th place, we have The Ice Age Adventures of Buck Wild. Now, Ice Age is a very popular franchise, so I thought I would include this movie today because, yeah, you know, again, I grew up with Ice Age. I went to see 2 and 3 and 4 in the cinema, actually. And, you know, I love the first one, and I think 2 and 3, especially 2, pretty good as well. 3's are decent. And the franchise does derail from there, you know, 4's not great. It's watchable, but it's not great. 5 is awful as well. But, yeah, this one here is terrible as well. And it is a shame. Because the trailers for this, I was like, okay, looks like we're kind of grounded again. We're going back to the dinosaur kingdom. We're not going to have aliens and pirates and stuff. This is going to be a bit more of a grounded Ice Age film. We're going back to those original 3, you know, kind of stuff. The animation style to it was great. I loved it. And Simon Pegg's coming back. I know none of the other cast really come back, but Simon Pegg's back. So if he's coming back, there was a bit of hope. And unfortunately, It was so bad. There's just so many things about this movie which I dislike. From, again, the plot they decided to go with was just so boring and uninteresting. The new side characters were just not good at all. Buck himself was quite annoying in this one, and again, I think it just shows that some characters should remain side characters, and this is a great example of that. And yeah, I think if they were going to finish off the Ice Age films, because obviously Blue Sky Animation shutting down, I think they should have focused on the old crew and given them a nice send-off, I guess, a final film for them, because this was not it. And there was no Scrat either, the little, what is he? I don't know. You know, the squirrel type character. You know, I don't know where he was, but he was missing from the movie, so that's an even bigger plus no from me. So yeah, wasn't a fan of that movie. Then coming in 5th place, we have Moonfall. If anyone remembers this, it was one of the big blockbusters right at the start of the year. Had Patrick Wilson in, who I'm a really big fan of. I really liked him. And the trailers made it just seem like this epic, huge disaster movie. I normally quite like my disaster films, but this is potentially, maybe not potentially, I think it definitely is the worst one I've seen. It's just, again, when you see these disaster films, you like kind of seeing the disaster elements, and you don't get much of it. You get people in rooms watching it on TV happening around the world. And let's face it, this film is just beyond stupid. The moon literally bounces off the Earth, and the Earth is completely fine. This is a thing that genuinely happens. Also, this film really has an identity crisis, because it is very much a disaster movie for large portions of the time. Then there's some action, then there's some sci-fi, that you get full-on alien stuff at the end, and it's like, what is this movie? What am I watching? I don't understand. Also, there's a cliffhanger at the end with the guy from Game of Thrones, and it is one of the most laughable endings I've ever seen. Like, oh my god, the aliens will come back, there's going to be a sequel. Okay, sure, whatever, Moonfall. The film was awful. Yeah, so there's that. Then 4th place, coming back to awful endings to these great series of movies. I last year, in the preparation to Halloween Kills, I watched all the Halloween films. And this year I'd done a little rewatch on the original Halloween 2018 and Halloween Kills. So I was ready for Halloween Ends. And wow, this might be the worst Halloween film of them all. Like, literally all of them. Even the Rob Zombie ones, whatever one you want to include, whatever one in your head sticks out as being one of the worst. This is down there. This is bottom 2 or 3 for me. It is so bad. There are some defenders of this movie, and I'm sorry to those people, but I just truly don't get it. From a filmmaking standpoint, everything about it is awful. I don't really go to Halloween films to get great filmmaking, let's be fair, but some of the worst lighting I've ever seen. The acting is terrible. The cinematography is bland and flat and boring. And then let's just talk about the plot. So in the last 2 films, we've had Laurie being a badass, we've had Michael Myers being a badass, just all-out gory slasher action. And in this film here, they decide to go for a completely different tone, and it doesn't work, it doesn't fit at all. Like, Michael Myers is in it for like 2 minutes, and he's weak as hell. Laurie is also pretty weak in this one compared to the last ones, where she was a badass setting traps and wanting to go hunt Michael down. None of that in this one. No, she's you know, completely terrified all of a sudden, and it really doesn't make sense carrying on from the last movies. There's a new kid in it who becomes Michael Myers' apprentice. Like, honestly, it's so bad. His character is terrible. The actor's not doing a good job. The script around him is awful. Also, his relationship with Laurie's granddaughter makes no sense. There's scenes where he fully admits to murdering people, and she'll just be like, start making out of him or something. It is laughably bad. This film absolutely sucks. I don't know if I could find any redeeming qualities about it, to be honest. It is just truly terrible. So yeah, Halloween Ends. Next, let's keep up with the American slashers, because the new Texas Chainsaw Massacre came out on Netflix, and I was kind of excited for this. I really like the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, so Leatherface has always been one of the creepier ones for me, and yeah, I'm going to be honest. this film is terrible. Again, it just done exactly what Halloween 2018 done. It just brings back the actress from one of the originals. She comes in to be a badass. Leatherface is just going through this town, killing characters you don't care about. And I think that is the biggest problem with this movie. You don't care about any character at all. There's just no sense of urge, or I don't know. It's just sort of like things just happen, and Leatherface just. I know that these are slasher films, you really don't go to them for much more than this. But, you know, it just feels like it's a very empty film. It's a mindless film. And it just isn't even that entertaining. Like, the kills are not that great. The bus scene was okay. That's the scene that everyone likes to try and praise from this film. I thought it was okay, but it was also really dumb. So, yeah, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the new one, it just really didn't do anything for me. I just wish these slasher movies would just grow a bit. They put a bit of effort into them, like the Scream films. I feel like the new Scream film, there was effort that actually went into that, whereas, you know, these ones are all just mindless garbage. Anyway, coming in second place, we got a Marvel film. Which one is it? You all know which one it is, let's face it. It's Morbius. The most ridiculously boring Marvel film I've ever seen. I have seen a couple worse Marvel films in my time, but this is probably the most boring. It is empty. It is soulless. There is nothing interesting about this movie. The character himself, Jared Leto, is terrible in this movie. The effects, for the most part, are pretty garbage. I liked it when he sort of took off, actually. All of the side characters, you feel nothing for them. They're making stupid decisions constantly. There's no actual hero aspects about Morbius in this one. There's a bit where he's literally about to let some money launderers just get away with what they're doing. He just wants their base. And yeah, Matt Smith is... I love Matt Smith, I do, but he's just not good in this movie either. His villain is laughable, and his dance scene it kills me. It absolutely kills me. Yeah, and the script as well. The script is so bad. Those end credit scenes. Oh my god, poor Kevin Feige, he's just lost the Vulture because Sony decided to... I don't know what they were thinking. This whole Sony Marvel universe with, you know, the Venom films, this, and we're going to have Kraven and Madame Web. It sucks. It is awful. It is the worst, one of the worst franchises I've ever seen. They need to stop. Anyway, my worst film of the year. Let's get on to the last one. My least favourite film of 2022 is going to a film which people were excited for because there was a, you know, this was a popular series. Once upon a time, they're popular characters, and a somewhat popular director, Mr. Rob Zombie, making this movie. The Munsters is the worst film I saw this year. It was fucking awful. The thing is with the Munsters, look, I don't mind the Munsters, but I think they're kind of out of date anyway. To bring them back, you have to do something special and unique with them. And unfortunately, that's not what Rob Zombie done. He implanted on top of them that cheesy, out-of-date look they had. He planted on top of them that cheesy, out-of-date humour. And nothing about this movie worked. It was one of the worst scripts I've seen. It looks so cheap. It looks horrible. The actors were all doing terrible jobs because they were doing this very over-the-top thing. I know that's kind of what the Munsters were, but times change. It's time to change these characters up, make them a bit more modern. Let's make them work for modern cinema. And my God, there was just nothing, absolutely nothing good about this movie. From start to finish, it was awful. So yeah, there we go. There's my 10 worst films of the year, guys. I actually find it harder to talk about these bad films because I don't have much good things to say. I much prefer doing my top 10 best films, as most people would imagine. But anyway, as I say, we're gonna rank all my TV shows for this year. Maybe next, I'm not sure, but that's coming. And we're gonna be ranking every single movie and doing my top 10 most anticipated movies for 2023. So there's quite a bit still to come yet, guys. So I hope you enjoyed this video. There'll be more coming soon. Thank you always for your support. And yeah, I'll see you next time for another video. Bye-bye.